Welcome to the Teaching Bites podcast. Here are your hosts, Fred and Sharon Jaravada.
Hi everyone, my name is Fred Jaravada and welcome to the Teaching Bites show where we connect you with people and ideas to take your teaching to the next level. Today I have a special guest. We have Mr. Chris Corrigan, which interestingly enough, we had another Corrigan back in episode 30. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But this gentleman here, Mr. Corrigan, Chris, we have a connection also I work in the Aquifer Space, Makerspace, which was the Aquifer Computer Lab. Chris used to work there a few years before I did.
You have my old job.
I have his old job. And today we are here at the the historic 7 Mile restaurant and bar in San Francisco. Hey Chris, how you doing?
Good. It's good to be here.
Good, all right. So a couple things before we get started. Now, you have been a teacher, you're an educator, you are a director of technology, and also a famous comedian here in the Bay Area. So we're going to talk all about all that. But I want you to give us your origin story and just tell us, how did you get here?
How'd I get here?
To this point in life.
Yeah. I mean, there's years ago. I mean, if I were to go way back, if you want to hear the whole story.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So I was studying, in college, creative writing and theater, and when I got out, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know what to do with that degree, and I worked in marketing for a while, and I found it kind of soulless and disillusioning, and it just so happened the city I was living in, Pittsburgh, the University of Pittsburgh was doing an experimental master's program in education, and I thought to myself, what do I like doing? I like talking about reading and writing. Why don't I get a job where I get to do that? So I went into the master's program at Pitt. After that, I taught English for many years in Washington, D.C., and then I moved to San Francisco.
What grade levels?
In Washington, I taught high school. I taught juniors and seniors. While I was working on my master's, I taught full-time. I also taught junior American literature. And then moved to San Francisco, wound up teaching through a roundabout way at Stewart Hall for Boys, where I taught 6th and 7th grade English. Started the drama program there with a colleague from the girls' school. And then something came up. There was an opening at the computer lab, and this would have been 97. And I was really fascinated thinking about how technology was going to change how my students communicated and how my students were able to express themselves, because that's really what teaching English was all about. My background in theater.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really sort of fascinated what direction that was going to go and how that was going to change things. So I moved to teaching tech in the Aquifer Computer Lab. Had a really great experience there. From there, moved on to San Francisco Day School, where I was a tech integrator for 15 years. And then just this past year, a position came up at Marin Primary and Middle School. I had some friends who taught there. The head of school, Julie Elam, is someone I had worked with in the past. I had a lot of respect for. So I applied for the job, and now I'm working there in their tech department. It's a pretty small department. It's me and the IT guy. So, and that's been really a great challenge, and I really like that a lot. So that's kind of how I got here professionally.
Wow, a lot of experience there. Okay, so now why do you do what you do? Of all that experience, why are you still in education and why in technology?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm still in education just because it's fun. Like, I really enjoy it. I find it creative. I find it challenging. I'm solving problems every day. As for technology, it's weird because I started out almost the polar opposite of technology, but became really, like I said, fascinated with how technology was going to affect teaching, especially English and communication. But what really excited me once I got into it was that on any given day, I'm not just, I'm the 7th grade English teacher or the 6th grade English teacher, the drama teacher. On any given day, I'm a 2nd grade science teacher. And then sometimes I'm a 5th grade math teacher, and then other times I get to be the 7th grade English teacher again. Right. So I really like that. I like the change. I like the challenge. I like the creativity of working with teachers and coming up with ideas with them.
Now, what was that aha moment? Was there an aha moment that you realized, okay, teaching, this is for me? Was there a moment or many moments? Can you remember a special, that moment, like, yep, I think I'm going to stick with this?
Yeah, I do. It's funny because for all you people out there in podcast land, Fred sent me these questions ahead of time. And it really made me think. But I like this one because it really made me think about what it is that I wanted to do and or what it was that kept me in teaching. And I remember working with, when I was teaching English still at Stewart Hall and talking about literature with kids. And I had a student and an interesting kid, and we would talk about literature and culture and doing deeper readings, and he came back. He had seen a movie, and I asked him, I forget what the movie was, but I asked him, so what'd you think of the movie you saw over the weekend? And he went on and he said, Mr. Corrigan, I hate you. I was like, why do you hate me? He's like, I went to see this movie, and 2 years ago I would have loved this movie. And I think he had snuck in, it was something inappropriate, And he said, now when I see it, all I could think about is how the director underestimated his audience. He sold me short. He didn't think I was that smart.
Wow.
And I felt ripped off. And I said, well, why does that make you hate me? He's like, you're the one who taught me to look at things that way. He's like, you're the one who showed me to look at things with a critical eye. So like when I read a book, try to look at the perspectives and, why did they make this book? And why are they trying to sell this book to me?
That's awesome.
And so, and for me, I was like, that's it. Like,
I gotcha.
And it's not about, like, I say this when I talk about teaching English and a little bit about teaching tech. It applies as well. Like, nobody's ever going to ask you in your life who the protagonist in Old Man and the Sea is, right? That doesn't necessarily matter. But they are going to ask you to make an informed opinion. They are going to ask you to solve problems. They are going to ask you to look at information and make a judgment on it. And that's what's kind of cool. That's what I really love about teaching.
That's cool. That's an amazing moment. Love that story. Okay, so before we move on, I have a question now. Have you seen the difference of using technology today versus way back in the day when you were doing that?
Yeah.
How does it? What are the differences now, or similar things?
It depends. It's funny. You're throwing me a curve. You didn't send me this question beforehand. That's a great question. But anyway, no. What I would say is this is what I've noticed, and it depends. Since I've taught technology. I'm at the third school, and it depends on where you enter the equation in the culture of the school, if that makes sense. So when I first started at the day school, there were certain approaches or philosophies about, when do we start introducing technology? This is in 2000, 16 years ago. And so in some ways they were like way ahead. They were doing some things that were way ahead what I was doing at my past school, but in other ways they were behind. So, and the same thing at the school that I've stepped into now. What I find is, so in some ways that's sort of similar. Like you've got to read the faculty, you've got to read the culture of the school, where are they at, and I think that's really important.
The faculty changes.
Right? And also just where's their comfort level? Mm-hmm. Because if there's not buy-in by faculty for the use of technology, if they're not seeing it as valuable or it's a hindrance to them, they don't want to use it and they're not going to use it. So what I always try so I think that's something. It's kind of important, but you also have to look at the culture of the school because the faculty is going to mirror the culture of the school.
Now, you also teach a program a graduate credential program, the BADI program, the Bay Area Teachers
Training Institute.
Training
yeah.
Institute. Okay, you do that also. Now, do you see a difference between this generation now and last generation? Because this generation, they grew up with technology. Is there any opinions on that? What do you see?
Well, what I see, it's interesting, and that it's something that comes up in my class. They're very, like, my graduate students are very tech savvy. You know, as much as I hate the term, and I often think of it and try to debunk it as a myth, like digital natives. I think that that's sort of an illusion.
No, are they digitally savvy with social media or what?
You know, it depends. They're sort of all over the place. They're digitally savvy. You know what? They're very internet savvy.
Okay. They can search really well, fast.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Many of them are very familiar with apps because they grew, different apps like, that they played with. What they don't do, and it's something that comes up in my class is, I'll even say to them, I'm like, you will probably be with some of the technology, probably even more experienced or skilled than I am. I mean, at this stage, I'm a 50-year-old guy,
A young 50-year-old guy.
Yeah, I'm a young.
I'm right behind you, baby, right there.
But it's funny because I joke. They won't even let me on the Google campus because I'm too old. But my graduate students, they're young and they're very familiar with it. What they're not familiar with, though, is how do you use it for technology? How does it relate for teaching?
For teaching.
How does it relate to pedagogy? And that's something that they don't know.
Because technology for them is very individual.
Exactly.
Right.
And they're not seeing it they're like, oh, yeah, my kids are doing a research project. They'll just look stuff up on, they'll Google it or they'll look it up on the web. But they don't think about, how do you direct them to do a good search? How do you direct them to evaluate websites? The same with different apps. Like if I were to, I would, within the context of my class, I teach them oh, here's the ins and outs of iMovie. Here's the ins and outs of, different multimedia apps or Photoshop or whatever. That said, they know it. A lot of them already know. Oh, yeah, I already know iMovie. I've made 1 million iMovies. And I'm like, yes, but do you know iMovie as a teacher? How would you use it with kids?
Right.
What's going to be the issues with kids? And how do you make it so that the technology complements your content goals and your pedagogical goals, as opposed to just here's the technology.
So you blow their minds away. They're like, what? I'm going to use iMovie this way now?
Yeah, there's a little bit of that, and there's a little bit, I'd have to say, of, they don't, it's just sort of thinking about, just thinking about where it's going to go, how, I'm having a hard time with this, but it's that idea of, oh yeah, I can do it, but I can't necessarily teach it, and I don't even know if that's that important anymore, but it's how do I use it?
Right.
How do I use it to my teaching ends? And I think that's a big
in a more meaningful way. Right?
Exactly, in a more meaningful way.
Right, okay, good, very good. So, what's the one thing that you wish you had known before you started your educational journey, your teaching journey? The one thing.
How much time I
spent? Keep it clean.
Yeah.
If you can go back and tell your 25-year-old self.
How much time as a teacher you spend not teaching?
Not teaching. Not teaching, okay.
And
what does that mean? What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, I think that it sounds almost gripey or whatever, or complainy to talk about it. But the sense of how much of the job is yard duty and faculty meetings and that kind of stuff, which isn't sort of the fun stuff that draws us all to teaching. I remember when I was in grad school myself, I had a teacher, one of my professors. She corrected one of the students. We were in a class, and the student had said something like, "Oh my gosh, I love English, and I love kids, and I want to be a teacher, and my best teachers I ever had were my friends." And and I think a lot of people go into teaching with that in mind. I know even I, to a certain extent, did. although listening to that statement now, it sounds so naive. And my professor at the time said, they were not your friends. They were friendly, but they were not your friends. And you, as teachers, need to know that. Like, it's not enough to love your subject matter, and it's not enough to love kids. You have to love teaching. And you have to love sort of the school culture. And I think that that's kind of an important thing. I think that that kind of resonated with me. And that's what has gotten me through those times where I'm like, oh, I got to sit through another faculty meeting, you know, when I'm tired or whatever. Or the same problem, you know, comes up and rears its head again, and you've got to work through that.
Right. Now, would that be the quote, the quote that really resonates with you, or is there another quote that resonates with you right now?
You know, I'd have to say that, you know, that the quote from my professor, that really sort of guides a lot of what I do, and the way I think about my work with the kids or the students is, you know, I'm there to help them. I'm there, you know, not to be their friend. I think now that I'm a veteran teacher and much older, I think what sort of guides me now is sort of that idea of just expecting the unexpected and kind of reveling in that, like loving those moments of the of challenge where you're not it's like, oh, I've got to work my way through this problem. I've got to I don't know the answer. Let's find it together. That's kind of what's guiding me right now.
That's good. Now, how do you guide or how do you motivate your students? What's your favorite way of doing that?
Threats of physical violence. No. That's not going in the podcast, I hope.
But you don't mean it. He doesn't mean it, people. He doesn't mean it at all.
No, you know what I think, and it's interesting, is what I find is motivating, and it's fun. Like, for me, it's a fun part in my teaching, is that idea of keeping stuff challenging enough for the kids that they've got to work at it. They've got to figure something out, you know, and they're not going to get it the first time, and balancing that with moments of success. So that if I have a kid, so that the kids themselves have those aha moments, you know, but not too many of them. Not that they're being spoon-fed, but they have that challenge. Like, they have that, and they feel that, like, yes, I earned that. Now I'm on to the next challenge. Now I'm on the next thing. I want to go to the next level.
Right.
You know, and that applied when I was teaching English, and I definitely apply that to the way I structure technology and tech integration. Nice.
Okay, so name, or what was the oh well moment, or I could say the oh snap moment. That's a clean way of saying the other moment. The oh snap moment. Yeah. And what I mean is that something that it didn't work, or something that, okay, that's not going to work. I'm going to toss that to the side.
You guys okay?
You're doing well. Yeah, thank you. That's really hard to say, because I like to think,
Okay.
I kind of, and it's just my nature, where I tend to be sort of self-critical, and I feel like there's a million of those. Right. Like, every lesson I've ever taught, this interview, there's a million of those, oh, well, I blew that one moments. And then it's that idea of thinking, well, how do I tweak it? How do I sort of point to one, you know, is really difficult.
So how do you get to that? How do you develop that skill of making it better? How do you, what is that? Is it an innate thing as a teacher? Or what made you, like, we all have those moments of, like, messing up, right? And we all want to make it better.
Yeah. I think it's just, it's something that came when I was teaching English, you know, to have 3 sections of the same class every day. Right. And I always felt bad for the kids I had first section.
Right, yeah.
First section, like, oh, right? And the kids at the third section, like, yeah. They got it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm on.
They got the cleaned up version, yeah.
You know, and I know what questions to ask. I don't know. That's really hard to say. I think that it's something that comes with experience. Mm-hmm. It comes with, again, I mentioned, like, I tend to be self-critical or self-reflective. I think you can't be a teacher without being, like, constantly reflective on your practice.
Yeah.
And that could be a minute thing, like a detail within an individual lesson, or just how you present material or how you structure lessons or how you put together units. So I think that's a big, that's a big part of it. It's that it goes with the territory. The professor I mentioned earlier said something as well that really stuck with me, which was no one goes into teaching who isn't a caring, thoughtful person, or no one stays in teaching who isn't a caring, thoughtful person. And I think that's really true. I mean, we're not in it for the money, right?
No, I'm still waiting for it.
In San Francisco. But I think that's important. Like I think it's in the character of someone who wants to be a teacher or stay being a teacher is like, I want to do better. I want to give the kids the best I can. Right. Even on those days where it's like, oh, the kids are driving me nuts, or that one kid who drives you nuts. They're not all these miracle savior stories, but you do want to reach that kid, and you do want to try, and you do want the best for your students.
Right. It's not that movie.
Yeah.
You get them in 90 minutes.
Exactly. Exactly. No, it's not 90 minutes, kids. It's
it's a whole
it's going
year
on 30 years, baby.
All right. So can you name a moment in time of a challenge that became the biggest challenge and just like it really got to you? And how'd you overcame that?
That's a hard one. I'd have to say a specific instance. I mean, it didn't really necessarily have to do with curriculum, but it had other aspects. I had the role of being an 8th grade advisor, which I love because it allowed me to interact with the students on a different level, on a more dealing with their social emotional needs as well, and that's a big aspect of teaching. And I don't want to, we're doing this interview and talking a lot about teaching and classes and technology, but I mean that's a very important part of it, especially being a middle school teacher. And I had a student who came in. He was very agitated one day, and he told me what was up. And he had done some things that he shouldn't have been doing, like drinking or
right.
And he told me about it, and and he told me in confidence, and I've dealt with, especially when I was dealing with high school, like I dealt with that before, and a lot of times when I was a younger teacher, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to be the cool teacher, and I'm not going to say anything, But this kid said something to me, and I did say something. I went to the school counselor. I'm like, you know what? I care about this kid, and I'm very concerned, and the situation didn't become like a big deal, but it became a deal. There was definitely gravity added based on my actions. The kid's mother called me and was cussing me out that I betrayed her son. The son was really mad at me. And it wasn't even so much that I betrayed him. It's not like the kid got in a lot of trouble. I just went and talked to a professional, like, how do I deal with this?
Right.
For my student, How does this fall in the mandated reporter thing? If this is something I know where a kid is causing harm to himself,
right.
What do I have to do in this situation? I was a little over my head and a little scared. The kid hated me. Mother hated me.
Wow.
Years later, so that was, this is going back now 6 or 7 years, I guess, at this point. And the kid came up to me, and he said, this is recently, like within the past few years, and he's like, thank you.
Wow.
Because you're the only one who cared enough to do something.
Wow.
He's like, I hated you. He's like, I'm still mad at you. He's like, I went through hell. It sucked, dude. You have no idea.
Right.
But you cared enough to say something. And other people I talked to and other adults in my life who I talked to didn't. And I realize now that you're the one who helped me. You helped me more than the people who didn't say anything.
Right. That's awesome. Wow. That's awesome. That's very powerful. Wow. Okay. Okay, quickly. And I'm going to just throw this at you and just mention them. Okay. Favorite book?
Favorite book?
Come on, Mr. English teacher.
As an English teacher,
Pick one.
The one that I had to teach, or the one
that's personally for you?
It comes back to me every time. Favorite? Wow, that's a hard one. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Great, one classic, yes.
It's a classic. Old Man in the Sea. Sula by Toni Morrison.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, it's terrible because like even though I'm an English teacher or was an English teacher, there's this sort of intellectual snob side of me in that. But I love garbage. like give me Stephen King.
right.
But even that. But anyway. I'd have to say, Cuckoo's Nest.
Great. Yeah.
Is probably like the book.
I've never read the book. How was it compared to the movie?
Oh, so much better.
Much better, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the book is great because it works on a lot of,
People love it,
yeah. It's not like Ken Kesey, man. Like, it works on a lot of different levels, and there's a lot of territory you can cover within the novel. Like, the movie just basically deals with the conflict between the main character, McMurphy, and Big Nurse. Whereas the book focuses more on the other characters and sort of, it's not about their conflict as much as it's about sort of the conflict of an individual in a society.
Okay. Music. Musician. Group, band.
The Grateful Dead.
Grateful Dead, right?
I love the Grateful Dead. To go back to that original story, one of the reasons I moved to San Francisco was like, I was in my 20s, had just finished graduate school, and I'm like, well, if I get a job teaching in San Francisco, I can see more Dead shows. Wouldn't that be great? The decisions we make in life.
Yeah.
But I have to say the Grateful Dead and Lou Reed. I like that sort of gritty.
Right.
Gets me back to my East Coast roots.
Nice. Very nice. Okay, how about movie?
Favorite movie? MASH by Robert Altman.
Love that movie. I love that. This is not the TV series, although I love the TV series a lot too. It's not the Alan Alda one. This is the other one, the movie.
The original movie. I think it's brilliant. The way it's filmed, it's done like a collage. It's an experimental film.
Elliot Gould? Was it Elliot Gould?
Elliot Gould and Donald Sutherland and Tom Skerritt.
Right.
It's
so young.
It's so funny. I was on a comedy podcast.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He mentioned that I do comedy, so a local comedian was doing a podcast and was interviewing me, and we wound up talking about the TV show MASH. So it's funny. It's my go-to. It's my podcast go-to.
It's good. Okay, so let's go to comedy. How does that fit in? When you're a funny guy, you're naturally funny, you're very witty. How does that play into your teaching? Or does it?
I mean, my comedy and my teaching are two different things. What it does for my teaching, though, is it makes me comfortable in front of a group of people, especially now, like when I've got,
So wait. You did comedy before, or did you teach first?
I taught first.
But
comedy made me more comfortable. It made me, I think it made me a better communicator. It made me, as far as being a teacher, it made me, and it's something that I've always done, is like, and one of the things I hope to impart on my students is like, don't take everything too seriously, right? It's life. Like, how much time do we have on the planet? Tick, 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 tick. Let's laugh at some stuff along the way.
Right.
And I guess that's it. I mean, before I started doing comedy regularly, I was a teacher, but I guess it's hard to say. I don't know if one necessarily informs the other.
Yeah.
But the whole, like, doing comedy doesn't make me, I guess it's made me more of a risk taker when I teach and when I think of stuff like, hey, let's try this and see what happens.
Right.
Because that's one of the most, I think it's one of the scariest things. I mean, you tested right in the audience right there. Yeah.
Right? You test a joke right there, and then you get the feedback, immediate feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess, like, in the same thing, like with kids, not so much that it's a performance in front of the kids, but like when planning a lesson, it's like, well, let's try it. What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
Let's see where this goes. Let's go on the adventure.
Okay, so what motivates you?
What motivates me?
What makes you get up in the morning?
My mortgage payment. The dog licking my face. I mean, I'd have to say that, you know, it sounds goofy and it sounds trite, but I have fun. Like, I love, you know, when I was younger, and, you know, thought, oh, I'm going to be a writer or some sort of an artist. I didn't know how to do that, and I didn't know how to go about doing that. And then when I got into teaching, that feeds that side of me, the creativity. Like, every day is a new challenge. Every day is something new. Every day is a new interaction with the kids. The planning of the lessons or the planning of a unit, like, so much of my job right now is working with teachers and being like, hey, let's look at what you're doing and find a new way to do it and twist it, and that's a blast.
Now, how do you do that? I do the same thing. I do. I train teachers also. How do you motivate the teachers who are resistant to using technology?
I go to the principal. No, I don't do that. What I try to do, it's kind of like I was saying earlier with the kids, is, and you and I have talked about this outside of here before, is I try to give them, if they're reticent to use technology, I try to make it as easy, as simple, as square one as possible. I find that most people are worried, oh, it's not going to work and it's going to get in the way. Like, that's the biggest thing.
And they put this mental block, or they always think of the bad things happening, right?
It's going to be a hassle. It's going to be more of a hassle than it's worth. So I try to set them up with, like, you know what? We're just going to put a picture in a Word document.
Right. That's great.
And we're done. And it's successful and it works. And then once a teacher has that moment of success, it's like working with kids, you know, balancing success and level of concern. Like, oh, it's hard, I got to push through it. Oh, but I've had success, and now I'm going to push a little farther or further. It's the same kind of thing. And I think that once teachers have a little bit of a success, what I like to do is, like, do as much as I can to support them, and even do as much as the background work as possible. And even let them step back a little bit. I had a colleague of ours at Hamlin used to give me a hard time. She's like, you're all about making templates. I'm like, yes, I am. Yeah. Right now I am. But once teachers have that and they have a success, and I kick back, or I do something where I'm kind of manipulating all the tech aspects in the background, and they have success and they see it, what's great is then a teacher will say, oh, can we do something like that, but this way?
Nice.
And then it comes from the teachers.
Yes.
So once it starts coming from the teachers, and then it's there, that's my favorite thing.
Yeah, that's like the aha moment, right?
I love that stuff. Like, I did a project with a second grade teacher this year where we did, and it's something I had done in the past, and went at the beginning of the year, you know, what do you guys do with technology? She's like, not a lot, it's kind of a pain, it never works. Yeah. You know, or the kids can't figure it out. And I said, what about something that doesn't even involve the kids? Like that that the kids aren't doing something. And I said, why don't she did regular reading assessments. And I said, why don't the kids do the reading assessments with you and me, but instead of just sitting down taking notes while they read, why don't we video them?
Right. Beautiful, right there.
Right? And she's like, well, why would we want to do that? And I said, because you can reference them again later. Come parent-teacher conference time, and you're talking about a student's reading.
Good evidence right there.
And here you can show it. And you can measure it over the course of the year. We do, you know, every 6 weeks or whatever, we record the kids reading, and you can see it. And it was great. And we did it, and she loved it. She's like, oh my gosh, that was so helpful.
Right.
And I said, great, let's set up a time and we'll do it again next month. And she's like, well, wait a second, can we do it this way? And she was asking, here's what I need. And she started thinking of ways, because we had a video of a kid reading a book. She's like, is there a way we can shoot the video where we can see the words better, or take a picture, and then start using, different multimedia apps.
Wow, okay.
To do it. And she's like,
whoa.
Yeah.
I would slow down there.
Yeah, so that was it. Well, she was like, is there a way we can do it? And I'm like, well, there's these other multimedia apps. So now I would have to say she's one of the teachers that's using technology the most in my school.
Yeah.
But she's coming up with her own ideas. We actually sort of abandoned the let's record the kids every month, but she's come up with different things where she's testing their fluency and reading looking at how they read, how they read with expression, and then we're doing, and now we're getting to a point where the kids are picking books where they're taking pictures of the pages and then doing the reading over them and creating iBooks.
Right.
Which she's using as an assessment tool, and then we're exporting them and then sharing them with the school that I'm at now has a preschool, so now we're making these videos that the second graders are making, and they're sharing them with the preschoolers.
Nice. Love that.
But, what it was so much of that, a lot of that came from the teacher herself, and once it came from her, it was hers.
It was hers, right.
And it wasn't the tech guy like, hey, let's do this thing that's going to be a pain in the neck. She had a moment of success. She saw things, and then her creativity.
Right.
And that was a blast.
That's making me a tear in my eye. Like, you all growing up now. You got it.
Yeah. But there's an aspect of job security. She can't do it all.
I know, she can't do it all. She doesn't know the password to Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, quickly. Favorite tech tool? What do you like? Tech tools?
They're changing so fast. I like anything that plays with each other. Because what I'm really, at least for me, my focus is on sort of app smashing. So anything that I can get to play with each other and have the kids figure out like, oh, this tool allows me to do a flipbook animation, but then I can export that flipbook animation and put it into iMovie, and this allows me to do something else and put it over it, and because that, for me, again, getting back to that whole no one's going to ask you who the protagonist in Old Man and the Sea is, no one's going to, like, the apps are going to change. The tablet's going to be dead in 5 years, and it's going to be something else.
Most companies die out, right.
And what's important is that the kids learn, like, oh, here's a tool that, like, they're faced with a problem, they're faced with a project or something they need to do, and that they can break the project into its component parts, find the tool that addresses each component part, and then put it all back together.
That's what I was going to ask you. What, as a teacher, isn't that too much, or why would they want to do that? But I like how you explained it. The tools change, but the kids realize they could find the best tool for this part, and they're mixing and matching, and they're just creating a new way of doing things with different tools.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think that's where that's the power of teaching technology. It's not about, like, when you asked earlier, and I don't even know if I answered the question, how has it changed? Like, in the past, it was about teaching kids the technology. Mm-hmm. Here's how you use Microsoft Word
how
and set a tab.
How to save.
How to save.
That. Right.
And then sometimes there's still an aspect of that. But what's, I think, more important now is not teaching the technology, but teaching problem solving. Right? And that's one of the reasons I love working with tablets and iPads so much, is you don't have to spend so much time teaching the technology. The kids can figure that part out, or you work with them. Like, most apps, once you start with them, you can figure them out.
Right.
It's that problem solving aspect.
No. Which is better? What do you like better, and why? Tablets, laptops. The debate's still there.
Yeah.
Right, and I know Chromebooks have taken over a lot of the schools right now, but I want to hear your take on that.
I like tablets. I'm still.
Why?
Because they're like no muss, no fuss. When I first started teaching tech, and many teachers, their complaint about technology is, I need to cover my content. whatever that looks like, and even in the most progressive schools, it's like, well, I still need to make sure I get through fractions,
Right.
by the end of the year. And if you're spending so much time like using technology and teaching the technology, it takes away from the time spent on fractions. And I find that the iPad or the tablets I don't have to worry about peripherals, I don't have to worry about downloading everything is right there. Mm-hmm. So it's like, before it was like, hey, we're going to do a project in Spanish where the kids are going to make a movie. They had to film the movie, they had to download the movie, they had to open it up, they had the camera, they had peripherals.
And all the cables and all this stuff, right?
And what's great about the iPad is it fires up.
It's on.
Right? If you've got a good IT guy and your network's solid, it connects to everything you need it to connect to. And when you're done, you close it and you put it away.
Done, right?
And it's not like, I can't get on the server.
Right.
What, you don't have to deal with any of that.
My keys are missing.
My keys are missing.
Yeah, that happens a lot, right?
And that's it. When I first started teaching tech and working in a tech lab as opposed to doing the sort of push-in work I'm doing now.
No more? I'm good for now. Thank you.
But that whole idea of there'd be so much to it. Now it's just it's all right there.
Right.
And it's all I'm not spending that time teaching technology as much as I'm teaching how to use technology.
Right. Okay, so favorite resource, where do you get some ideas? What's something cool that other teachers can look at?
You're my favorite. You should know that by now. How many emails do you get from me? How many phone calls?
No. See, this podcast episode, I'm going to go listen to it 2 more times. You're dropping a lot of gems here. See? So, but for other listeners, what are some resources that you like that they can go check out?
I think the best resource is your colleagues, quite honestly. I mean, find out what other people are doing and share ideas. That's the biggest for me. Conferences, going to conferences and then seeing something. And then, I was talking about with the second grade teacher, I showed her something and then she made it her own. Mm-hmm. I love going to conferences and seeing what somebody's doing and then make it my own. Here's how I can tweak this.
Exactly, yeah.
The other thing I'd have to say is, I've become a big fan recently of Common Sense Media Graphite. Mm-hmm. And what I like about that isn't, I don't like necessarily, here's these lessons and I can take this lesson and use it. What I love doing is looking through and seeing the resources. It's almost like a conferencing. I can go through and look at what people have posted there and look at lessons that teachers are doing. Not that I necessarily care about the lessons they're doing, but I look at what they're using. Yeah. And that points me in directions there's an app. That's how I found Zaption that way and Media Breaker that way, which are apps that I'm loving right now as far as doing annotation for video. And you find stuff that way.
Zaption does that for annotation video?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Okay.
Check Zaption out. It's pretty cool. You can take a video. If you teach with video, all your teachers use we're going to go to a YouTube video. They should be using ViewPure, but they go to YouTube, right?
ViewPure. So, what is it? What is that?
ViewPure. ViewPure is great. If you go to ViewPure, do you use ViewPure at all?
No, we don't.
You just go right to YouTube.
I go to straight to YouTube and I make it big. I just go full screen, maybe. I just hide everything else that way.
ViewPure is great. It's basically a website, and you can copy the URL in from a YouTube video, and it will bring that. It'll bring that video up, and but it'll have no ads. It'll just be the video.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of
cleans
that.
up everything, all the other crap that's on top of it, right?
Cleans up all the stuff.
Comments and all
Comments,
that.
yeah. Because that's something that's come up. I've seen, people are like, we're going to look at a speech
Martin Luther King.
Martin Luther King, and then all of a sudden you see all these crazy racist things that are posted there, and that, even for a split second, that pops up in front of your kids. You're like, that could be a teachable moment, but the technology, that's another way technology is getting in the way. So I think that's a real cool thing.
Really good one. All right. A couple more questions. Okay, ta-da moment. What's your ta-da moment? What's your shining ta-da moment? Like, this is my work. This is what I love. This is.
I think my ta-da moment. I had I think did a project with science teacher using green screen, working on biomes, and this was a teacher who was like, I don't like technology, it gets in the way, blah, blah, blah. But an excellent teacher and always willing to try new stuff, but he's just like, I don't want to do, I don't like using technology. We did this project, he came off of it, and it was a sort of a ta-da moment for both of us. I went into the project thinking the kids were studying different, ecosystems, and we, the idea was they would shoot it, they would do all this research, they would write a paper, write a script, explaining aspects of the ecosystem, and we'd shoot them in front of a green screen, and then we could put them in the ecosystems themselves. Like, here we are in the rainforest, which is great and fun and sexy and all that. He really loved it, because it looked great. And for the two of us, like in my mind, I'm thinking, here's like a culminating project to this unit. Right. Like rather than hand in a paper, we'll hand this in.
Water, please. Thank you. That's his water.
That's my water. So anyway, but what was kind of cool, and both of us picked up on it, is watching the kids make the videos. They would shoot something. They'd shoot like, okay, here we are in the rainforest. And did you know that the rainforest, and they'd have some fact that they had researched that they put in the script. And then a kid would stop it and say, no, you're wrong. That's not right. And then the whole group of kids who were working on the video then went back and double-checked their research.
Wow.
Then they went back and shot it again.
Wow, okay.
And then shot it again. So with all the different times, so all of a sudden, where both me, somewhat naively, and this teacher were like, the video becomes sort of this project, this sort of assessment tool. This is what I know. It became more than that. It became a pedagogical tool because it was actually the process of making the video took the kids through making the content.
Right.
And that was like, right. And it really, it's kind of flipped my head around it in a different way. Again, making me be more embracing of those. We were talking earlier, those like, scrap it. But it's like, it's those failures. I remember that we were watching the kids make the movies, like, they screwed it up, they messed up the information. But they didn't necessarily mess up the information because they went back and they checked it. They filmed it again, and they shot it again, and they shot it again. And even stuff that they were getting right, I didn't, I goofed up, let's do it again. So that was kind of cool.
That's very cool. I like that. All right. So, Chris, what are you excited about now? What's coming up?
What am I excited about? Summer.
Something new happening. Anything that's like you're looking forward to?
What I'm looking forward to, I joke, I'm looking forward to summer. But during the summer, it's funny because I deal so much with technology, but during the summers I run a program up in Northern California that all focuses on outdoors and farming, and the kids, we teach kids how to work on a farm, basically. Right. And I'm really looking forward to that because it's a chance for me to kind of unplug and charge my own personal. I think that's something that's really important, that the teachers take the time to feed themselves. I mentioned earlier that professors teachers are all caring and giving and reflective people, but you need to also take care of yourselves.
You need to take care of yourself,
and have other aspects to your life. And I think that's something, if I can get on a soapbox, it's getting harder and harder to do in schools. because so often, I think teachers see the responsibilities placed on them and feel that responsibility, and more and more schools are, or more and more society, I think, blames teachers for its ills. How many times are teachers the villains in movies? I always think of like the principal in Breakfast Club, right?
Right.
Well,
Or in Back to the Future.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, it's always the teachers are always the bad guys.
Right.
And like listening to the campaign.
Or the Ferris Bueller. I remember all that. Yeah.
What was it? I was like, when Scott Walker was still running for president, and they asked him how he deal with terrorists. He's like, "Did you see what I did to those teachers in Wisconsin?"
Right.
But anyway,
What the hell was that?
that was crazy. But anyway, I think that that so much is foisted upon teachers, and I think that you need to take care of yourself. So I joke, I'm looking forward to summer,
awesome, yeah.
but I'm looking to nurturing other sides of myself.
And I think that's a good reminder for teachers everywhere. You gotta do yourself too. You gotta make sure you take a step back and rejuvenate yourself, right?
And for me, as a teacher, the most valuable things is experiential learning. So the stuff that I do over the summer is all experiential learning. What's kind of cool about technology is it's sort of faux experiential learning, because kids can sort of wander out. They're doing things. They're making things.
Right.
They're building things,
Right.
virtually or digitally. And I think that's really important.
That's awesome. Okay, so time-saving tip. Teachers need time-saving tips. What's a cool tip that you can share with teachers how to save some time? Being in the classroom for a long time also, now being a tech teacher and tech director.
Yeah. I would say time-saving tip, break it before the kids do.
Oh, what does that mean?
And what I mean by that is, as you're looking at what it is you want to teach, like and you're going through your prep and you're going through your project, look for those places where it's going to mess up, and anticipate it before and know how to fix it. Like, where are the opportunities? I think in my role as a tech guy, where are the kids? What is that moment when all the kids in the classroom's hands are going to go up and they're all yelling, "Wait, what?"
Right.
And get there before them, so you know, one, how to avoid it, and two, what to do when it happens.
Right. So you're front-loading all this, you're anticipating all this things that may happen.
Yeah, like look at look at where it can go wrong, and anticipate it. Don't necessarily don't do anything, or don't let that hinder you from doing something. But just know, like, it's going to go wrong, and try to anticipate as many of those glitches as possible.
Even a pencil sharpener breaks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Have an extra pencil. Okay. What's the best advice you've ever received? And in turn, what's your best advice you give to teachers?
Best advice I received is, I guess I'd have to go back to what that professor said to me. It's just like, there was a lot more to it. It's like, you can be friendly, the students are not necessarily your friends, right? At the time I was working with high school kids, and her comment was, always remember that your students, no matter what, and I think about this even when I work with my graduate students, is they may look like adults, they may act like adults, they may talk like adults, but they're still kids, and they're coming to you to help them develop themselves. And I think that's hugely important. And that sort of guides a lot of what I do.
So what's your advice to teachers now?
My advice to teachers now is to care deeply about what you do and bring yourself to it. Like, be you. Like, that's when I was talking a little bit ago about taking the time to nourish yourself. That's really important, because that's, the kid. I taught in Micronesia for a summer, a few years back, and I was working on this teeny tiny island in the middle of nowhere. And
No Wi-Fi.
no, we had Wi-Fi once in a while.
Once in a while. Okay.
Actually, no, we didn't. It was all plug-in. It was all
Right, okay.
So anyway, but that said, the guy who was the head of the school was a really great guy, Father Rich McAuliffe. It was a Jesuit school, and he, I asked him about living on the islands, and he's like, it's all about relationships. And he said, living on an island that's 10 miles around is all about relationships. You know everyone on the island.
They know you.
They know you. You're not going anywhere anytime soon. So it's all about the relationships you foster.
Right.
And I think about that, like that really resonated with me. And I think about that when I talk, I talk to people from other schools, or parents come and talk to me about schools. Like, your kids are going to get a good education pretty much anywhere they go.
Yeah.
And what sets schools apart is the quality of the relationships. And the feel of the relationships between faculty and kids, between administration and faculty, between faculty and each other. And I think that's that's really the big thing, is like, it's all about relationships. People, when people talk about distance learning and all this stuff you can do distance, and I think that's great, but there is that aspect, and it's one of the things I love about teaching. It's that relationship aspect, the relational aspect.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree with you, and that's inspiring. Yes. Okay, so Chris, how can people get in touch with you if they need to get in touch with you about any advice that you shared today?
They can get in touch with me. They can email me
Okay.
at. I'm trying to think which email to give them.
Well, they can email me also. They can also contact me, Fred@teachingbytes.com. They can do that too.
Okay.
Or Twitter. Maybe you have a Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow me at Twitter. I'm at MPMS Corrigan. I'm trying to remember. Did I put
I'll have it in the show notes.
MPMS Corrigan. And so I would say that would be the best way.
Yeah.
You can come see me May 7th at Spice Monkey in Oakland.
There you go. If you're in Oakland, California, come by. That's awesome, yeah.
Spice Monkey, the Comedy Machine Oakland show. I guess that would be the best way.
All right, so give a shout out. Any shout outs to people out there?
I'd love to give a shout out to Corrigan from episode 30, because she's actually an amazing teacher.
She is. She had her bonanza today.
Yeah, she did have her bonanza today.
Cowboys and I told her to wear the tassels. No, you missed the tassel.
But anyway,
awesome.
She's my lovely wife and a really amazing teacher.
And my mentor, yes, Mr. Corrigan. Chris, thank you so much for joining our show.
It's great to be here.
I hope it was fun.
It was definitely fun. I'm happy to do it, Fred.
All right, man.
Anything
thank
for
you,
brother.
All right, guys. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next time. Peace.
Thank you for listening to the Teaching Bites podcast at www.teachingbites.com.